All right. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Patrick Hennis, and I am Regional Director of our North Peninsula offices, and I also serve as Senior Director of our test preparation. And I am joined here by my colleague, Jessica Embry. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I work as our Senior Director of Academic Tutoring, and Pat and I have been here for a while, and we've gotten to see a lot of growth at AJ Tutoring, and we've seen literal hundreds of students personally, not counting the people that we've seen through the tutors that we work with. So
yeah, I want to say between the
two
two of us
together, yeah, exactly.
I would say between the two of us, I think we have like 26, 27 years of experience just here at AJ Tutoring. So we are OGs, as I like to say, here at AJ, and have been with the company, both of us, for more than a decade. And it's really been exciting to see, us grow and be able to work with more and more students. And thank you guys for hitting a little time on your Tuesday night to being here. And hopefully we're able to present and have a lot of great questions answered, and really be able to, both from a test preparation and academic level, be able to guide you through a lot of the landscapes and the evolving landscapes, of course, in a variety of ways. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and we will get started. So, again, welcome to AJ Tutoring Virtual Parent Night 2/22/22. Never a date we'll never forget. Again, my name is Patrick. I am your Senior Director of Test Prep. And I'm joined, of course, by Jessica, who's the Senior Director of Academic Tutoring. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of things. From a test prep standpoint, we really want to be able to discuss and provide an overview of the current SAT and ACT testing dates and landscape. We want to be able to create a testing plan that's unique for your student. We want to be able to help distinguish the differences between the two exams and what might be best for each type of learner. Jessica, what are we going to be covering in the academics?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the current challenges and opportunities that students have in school. I think transition from first to second semester is a really great time to reflect on what went well last semester and what we're looking at next semester and beyond. We'll talk a little bit more specifically about how you can support students in their courses, from regular high school courses all the way up through advanced college and AP courses. And then we'll take a little bit of a look at the 2022 AP exams and answer some of the questions that we had. We had a lot of questions about AP exams specifically and AP courses. So we'll try to cover some of that today.
Great. So just kind of jumping right in, let's talk about SAT and the ACT. Are they similar? How are they different? What might be the better fit for your student? We're going to talk again about what do these SAT and ACT tests really mean at this point as far as the college admissions process. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the major changes in some of the requirements from a lot of the schools in the country around the standardized testing. And we want to be able to update you on what that means for you and your student, how that looks moving forward, etc. So beginning to talk about the SAT. Again, the SAT, historically more of a coastal test, very popular East Coast and West Coast, originated out of Princeton. And it changed, obviously, a few years ago again. Of course, for a long time, it was out of the 1600 scale, 800 scores, your verbal and your math. Then probably about maybe 15 years ago now, it changed to a score of 2,400, adding an additional 800 section. Of course, now 5 years ago, roughly, they went back to that 1,600 scale. And the SAT, again, takes about 3 hours, and it consists of 3 different exams. The first section students take is a reading test. This is purely reading comprehension. They're given 5 different passages and asked questions about their interpretations of those 5 passages, main ideas, themes, etc., etc. The other section that kind of groups together with the reading is the writing and language test. This is very much grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, style, tone, etc. Both of those reading and writing and language scores do make up the total kind of older classic verbal score, now called the reading and writing score, and that's 1 score of 800. The other section of 800 is the math, and math is now broken up into 2 smaller sections. One section is without calculator, and one is with calculator. And both of those sections combined make up what's called the math test now. And again, you've got your writing or your reading and writing score 800, math score 800, a combined score back to a 1600. One of the differences that we'll see, we'll talk about when talking about SAT versus ACT, is the SAT does provide a little bit more time per question. It's not as fast-paced of a test, but each question can feel more challenging to different students. Okay. Again, most of the questions are multiple choice. There are some questions at the end of each of the two math sections that are grid-in questions, meaning you don't have any multiple choice answers. You actually have to fill in the correct value and bubble that value in. The ACT is the other test that students it's very popular. At this point now, across the country, it's about a 50-50 market share, meaning about equal number of students take the SAT and the ACT across the country. We, again, here in the Bay Area and on the West Coast, we still kind of tend to think exclusively about the SAT at times because that's really historically been the case and the trend in, again, the East Coast, West Coast. The ACT has historically been a more Midwest test. It's out of Iowa. If you grew up in the Midwest, you probably didn't even think about the SAT and only focused on the ACT because that's really the test that you took when you grew up in those areas. Now, because of course, the students are applying to the schools all over the country and really, are really have a lot of different resources at their disposal and can take these different exams. You're seeing, again, a lot of students locally here take the ACT versus the SAT, and of course in the Midwest, vice versa, more students taking the SAT versus the ACT. And keeping in mind with the college requirements, keep in mind the SAT and the ACT fulfill the exact same requirements. There's not one school that I'm aware of that accepts one but not the other. So when thinking about the best fit for your student, remember that this is not about what schools are looking for. This is about what's going to be the best singular score. And keep in mind, we can compare apples to apples when we're talking about SAT to ACT scores. There are 4 sections plus a writing test on the ACT. They are in this order: English, math, reading, and science. Each section, how they score it, each section is out of 36. So a perfect score in each of these individual sections is a 36. They take your individual best scores or the section scores and average those together to get you your composite score. So again, if you got a 30 in English, a 32 in math, a 30 in reading, a 32 in science, that averages out to a 31, and that would be your total composite score. The writing section is optional. One of the things about the SAT, they got rid of the essay a couple of years ago. There is no SAT essay anymore. There is still an essay on the ACT. It is optional. So your students can choose to take the writing or not. At this point, from my understanding and from what I've researched, literally only 8 schools require the ACT writing as part of their SAT test. And the only one that I've ever heard of is the Military Academy in West Point in New York. The other 7 I had never heard of, very, very small schools that probably more than likely your students not thinking about. So when thinking about the ACT writing prompt, it's very much simply, does your student want to showcase their writing skills, or do they want to hide those writing skills, of course, depending on their writing strengths. Again, each section is out of 36. Average of the 4 scores together, those first 4 is your composite score. So talking about the SAT versus the ACT, again, trying to pick and determine which one might be a better fit. I think there's a number of things to think about. Number one, most students aren't going to see a marked difference between the 2 scores, meaning there is a lot of overlapping content. To talk about the overlapping content first, the English section on the ACT and the writing and language section on the SAT are nearly identical. They're testing the same grammar rules, same punctuation rules, same sentence structure rules, etc. Math on both tests is very similar as well. Again, math on the SAT and the ACT, Both sections are in order of difficulty. Both require the same similar strategies and techniques. If there are some minute, subtle differences between the math sections, the ACT tends to have a more of an emphasis on geometry and less of an emphasis on Algebra 2, while the SAT is vice versa. It has more of an emphasis on Algebra 2, less of an emphasis on geometry. But again, generally speaking, really similar approaches, similar strategies, similar preparation for that. So there's a lot of overlapping content right away. Major differences. There is a science section on the ACT. Now, not to freak out about it, one thing to remember here, and what we tell and teach all of our students is you could have never taken a science class in your entire life and get a perfect score on the science section. So it's not testing your background knowledge in science. It's really simply testing your ability to interpret random charts, tables, and graphs successfully. Okay, again, don't need to know any background to do well in the science. You just need to be able to interpret graphs that you've never seen before in a way that you can identify trends in the data, etc. The other, I think, major fork in the road for many students in determining between the SAT and the ACT, in my experience, is the reading section. The reading section on the ACT is much faster paced, but also the content and the passages and text themselves are less dense, more easy to understand, more along the lines of a junior level reading, prompt. The SAT reading, on the other hand, is a bit more challenging, almost similar to what students may encounter as a reading prompt as freshmen in college. Again, reading faster pace on the ACT, but more straightforward on the ACT, and you can actually go back and find a lot of your answers word for word in the text on the ACT reading, which is something you very much cannot do on the SAT reading. Again, trying to determine which type of student is a better fit for the SAT versus the ACT. In general, students who are natural test takers may be stronger in math than other subjects, or students who like to work more methodically, the SAT might be a better fit early on. Again, natural test takers, meaning that there are a lot of innate test-taking skills on the SAT, even more so than the ACT. When I say stronger in math, simply put, half of the test on the SAT is math. So math makes up half of your scores, meaning if you're a very strong math student, it might make sense to focus on the SAT because you already have half the test in your back pocket. You already have that strength that you can showcase already on half the test. On vice versa, the ACT, the math is only 1/4 of the section. So if math is not a strength of yours, you can maybe dilute it amongst 3 other stronger sections, and it's not so apparent, so to speak, or so emphasized. And again, working more methodically has a lot to do with the pacing of the SAT. The SAT is more challenging for many students. The questions feel more difficult, but often it's a more methodical and slower pace that allows them to work more comfortably. So again, students who really don't like working quickly, they like to work more methodically, that SAT might be a better fit as well. Vice versa, again, students who are not natural test takers, who may have struggled traditionally with standardized tests in the past, who are weaker in math compared to other subjects, and or who can work very quickly and work through content, efficiently, the ACT might be a better fit as well. So these are things to think about early on when thinking about a better fit for your student. Again, one of the things that we often encourage students to do, and as your sophomores, for example, begin to look ahead to the summer, what are some first things that you can be doing here? We do offer, and students can take diagnostic SAT, ACT, or hybrid exams. A hybrid test we have is a singular test that's both equal parts SAT and equal parts ACT, and specifically designed to help students determine what might be the better fit. Of course, if they're open to it, we would always be encouraging them to take one full-length SAT and a full-length ACT just to be able to, again, get as much information and data as we can, but know that this hybrid test exists. Again, if you don't know already, we hold mock exams for our current and prospective students every weekend, both in person and virtually, and we'd be more than happy to arrange for that free of charge for your students to take on any of those exams moving forward. One thing to consider as well, when you talk about SAT or ACT, it doesn't have to be either or, meaning there are many students who are highly competitive and really want to give themselves double the chances to be successful, and in those cases, we encourage students to prepare and take both tests. Ultimately, it's very hard, even with diagnostic tests, to still determine what might be the better fit. truly the only way to see what is the better fit for a student is for the student to be fully prepared for exams and to be able to, again, take those at their best. And keeping in mind that we do have hybrid preps that can piggyback off the work that a student has already done, for example, for an SAT, and continue on for that ACT in a very efficient way. One last thing before we move on to the next slide that I wanted to highlight: if your student has extended time testing accommodations, or you are anticipating your student having extended time testing accommodations, just generally speaking, the ACT is almost always the better fit. I cannot remember a student who's had extended time testing accommodations for both the SAT and the ACT who hasn't gotten a better score and hasn't been more successful on the ACT. So just by default, that might be something to lean towards early on as well if your student, fits that category. Some upcoming test dates and really kind of talking about the current landscape. So first of all, there are 7 SATs and 7 ACTs each calendar year. These are the next 5. And what I've done here just to kind of highlight here is so you guys as parents can identify what might be good opportunities for your student depending on their class. Again, SAT, we've got a test coming up in March and May and June. These are all prime candidates for junior year testing. These are all great opportunities for juniors. As a sophomore, this is still a little bit early in the process. Of course, now we get into the August and October SAT dates. Of course, a lot of juniors, now seniors, will be taking those to be, of course, kind of finishing and rounding out their testing. But this might be one of the earlier opportunities for, current sophomores, rising juniors to begin taking those exams, early next year. As far as the ACT, same kind of thing. We've got an April test, a June test, and a July test coming up. All great opportunities for our current junior class of 23. September and October, more retakes for these class of 23, and of course now the first options really for these current sophomores, rising juniors, class of 24 to be considering in the process. So talking about some questions on how the SATs and ACTs fit into the current college admissions landscape. So question: many colleges have gone test optional. Should I still take the tests? The answer is generally yes. If you can be a strong test taker, if you can use this to showcase your strengths, your depth of knowledge in a variety of different ways, and really stand out, this is absolutely a great opportunity for you to continue to take these tests. While colleges have gone test optional, it doesn't mean that they're not necessarily expecting those students to turn in those scores. And if you're not turning in a score, basically they're assuming that it probably didn't go well and that you're probably not a strong tester. That doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get into that school necessarily. But again, when we're talking to college admissions officers, daily, we're continuing to hear that yes, our school has gone test optional, but we strongly encourage students to take these exams and use these exams as part of their preparation or admissions process. Again, hopefully right away that helps a little bit of your kind of planning moving forward. Honestly, the only reason I would not turn a test is if, of course, the student scores were not good and I didn't want schools to see those. Obviously, that might be an opportunity where you forego turning in the testing, where you forego the testing altogether, and you focus exclusively on your grades, your extracurriculars, your letters of rec, etc. Okay. Changes that are being made to the SAT. You might have saw about a month ago, early in January, they announced that starting in the fall of 2023, beginning with the PSAT in the fall of 23, they're going to be making the SAT online and shortening it up a tad. So it's going to go from a 3-hour test to a 2-hour test, and it will now be made to be online. There's going to be a lot more information to come. They haven't released any of the specifics yet, but we are eagerly anticipating that and are already on our end beginning to plan around that transition to a virtual test. Again, the class of the 25, the freshman class currently is really the first class that is going to be affected. So if you have a junior or a sophomore, you can disregard that altogether. Again, what students should take the SATs and ACTs and which students should skip them? I kind of mentioned this earlier. If you can really get a strong score and really only help your application process, you should absolutely strongly consider taking these exams because they are going to be an integral part. Students who skip them probably are students who are not going to be doing well. Despite having the resources or giving it their best, they weren't able to get the scores that ultimately are going to strengthen their application. In those situations, they probably want to go ahead and forego that testing. But I would definitely, in those cases, talk to your college counselor, either at school or if you're working with an independent counselor, and they should be able to help also direct you on what might make sense there. And again, I already talked about the SAT and ACTs still playing a major role. In fact, what you're seeing is kind of the reverse effect. By making these tests more optional, you're actually seeing the average test scores go up in a lot of these schools because, of course, only the stronger scores are being turned in. So, of course, take that for what you will. How can we help students prepare for the SATs? Well, again, I mentioned earlier, we encourage students to begin the preparation process with diagnostic SAT and or ACTs to see how they're scoring early on. If you are a parent of a sophomore, maybe thinking about later this spring when things are kind of lightening up, or early this summer, it might be a great time to start taking some diagnostic tests and just to see how it turns out. Again, as an expert in the college, the test preparation process, when I'm looking at these diagnostic SATs and ACTs and helping parents kind of navigate this situation, not only am I looking at these scores to determine what might be the better fit, but I'm looking at the scores to kind of determine what might be a great testing timeline. Meaning, if your student is scoring very well at an early stage, it might make sense for you to take the test at an earlier stage. If they're scoring a little bit more modestly, maybe giving them an extra 4, 5, 6 months of junior year can really benefit them in helping them reach their testing goals. So there's a variety of opportunities and a variety of positives that can come from these diagnostics in terms of helping us here at AJ determine, these next best steps. Keep in mind, remember, we hold these mock SAT and ACT exams every weekend for our current and prospective students free of charge. So you just let us know when you want to make that happen, and we are happy to help with those arrangements. What does a typical comprehensive test preparation looks like? Most students who are taking the test for the first time, typically we recommend about 10 hour-and-a-half sessions. And we're often begin with those maybe around kind of 12 to 15 weeks prior to their first official exam, to be able to meet roughly once a week, but be able to kind of navigate, certain weeks that might be busier for them, maybe family trips or holidays, busier weeks for school. If God forbid they fall ill and need to recover for a week, we can work around that too. Building a little bit of buffer really helps there. But generally speaking, it's about 15 hours of one-on-one instruction, as far as a comprehensive preparation. Keep in mind, that's not a set in stone. Everything that we do here is billed hourly, and we can modify the number of sessions to best fit each of your students' needs, family budgets, timelines, etc. Once they've done that comprehensive preparation, if they are ever going to retake the test, we will often encourage them to meet with their tutor for about 3 to 4 90-minute review sessions. They don't need to do another 10 sessions altogether. It's more like 3 to 4 sessions at that point, bringing those skills back to the surface, and of course, putting any special emphasis on any specific areas that they would like to, of course, focus on. We do hold group classes, so these are great opportunities for students to get all the needed strategies, techniques, and approaches to the exams in a group setting. The group classes are particularly popular in the summer for our rising juniors. It's a great way to get a lot of the fundamentals and structures done during the summer, and also then still allow for a little bit more of the personalized one-on-one support once the school year begins in those weeks leading up to the exam. So a little bit of a hybrid approach there in terms of the classes and the one-on-one. Of course, we're happy to help in any way possible there too. And last but not least, again, when do you begin? Honestly, we don't really encourage any real serious preparation until at the earliest summer before junior year. But that summer before junior year is a great opportunity to begin preparing for the test prep process, whether it be diagnostics, whether beginning to jump into the preparation, and of course, beginning to outline and game plan for your testing timeline and when you're going to take those exams, etc. These are some different testing plans. Again, kind of thinking about a myriad of different approaches. The minimalist approach, you take it one time in the spring. That's my best shot. I did my best. Great. That's not a very popular approach, but that could be an approach. I would say the most common approach is for a student to take their SAT or ACTs for the first time in spring of junior year. Again, this is all focused on really junior year, and then retaking the test for a second time, potentially later in the summer, early fall. Of course, taking it 2, maybe 3 times. You have an early and recruited athlete approach. This tends to be maybe for students who need their scores earlier or who are really scoring really well and maybe have the opportunity to maybe take it at an early stage in junior year and be done with the process. In this case, they may take their SAT or ACT in August or September of junior year, maybe a retake again in spring of junior year, keeping in mind, student scores continue to increase over time. And most students tend to maximize their scores in the summer and fall of senior year. So I like the idea in certain ways of taking it early, depending on the student, but knowing that there are still many times that they can retake it. And ultimately, we can anticipate their scores continue to climb if need be. Lastly, we have an intense approach. You're taking both the SAT and the ACT. You're retaking both, likely in the SAT and ACT in June, and then probably taking one of those one more time in the fall of senior year. Other things to think about when thinking about the SAT and ACT testing. What's a good score? Well, what's a good score is basically the scores that are going to get you into the college of your choice. So I know that's kind of a cop-out to some degree, but a good score is really relative to what school you're applying to. Again, all these scores are online. You can research and find the average incoming score for all of the schools that your student might be applying to. And that should give you a good range of what scores you can kind of think of. I always like to think about the UCs back when they did accept the SAT and ACTs as a good barometer. Your top tier UCs, your Cal, your UCLA, these were more like 33, 34 ACT scores, more like 1,400 to 1,500 SAT scores, etc. Your next tier, like your Davis, your Santa Barbara, your UC San Diego, probably more like 31, 32 range on the ACT, probably more like 1,300 to 1,450 on the SAT, etc. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight as far as differences in scores there. Super scoring is a term that you guys might see more and more as you kind of navigate this. That is when a school will allow you to cherry pick individual scores from multiple sittings. Meaning, again, if you took the SAT in March and got a 750 in math and a 650 in language, or the reading and writing, and then you took the SAT again and got a 650 in math and a 750 in the verbal score. If you're applying to schools at SuperScore, you can combine those two 750s on different tests to create a 1,500 SuperScore. So it allows you to cherry pick, so to speak. When they begin preparing, we already talked a little bit about that. That would be, at the earliest summer. But really, junior year is really kind of a full year of preparing for these exams. Earliest would be summer, but again, a lot of students may wait till the school year to begin, and that can work too. How many tests do students take? How many times should students take their test? We recommend no more than 3 times, okay? By the 3rd time, and especially if you space them out, you've done the due diligence, you've done your preparation effectively, you kind of know what you're working with. And we don't really tend to see any dramatic increases that would make a major difference after a 4th or 5th retake of the SAT or ACT. Do colleges see all the student scores? That's one thing. Again, how many times should your students take their test? Probably no more than 3 times. Can they take it more than 3 times? Absolutely. They can take it 15 times if they want. And keep in mind, colleges only see the scores that you personally send them. Okay, so they don't have access to all the scores. But when we're talking about limiting 3 times, it's much more about the student's bandwidth, about their energy. We don't really see statistically too much dramatic increases after the 3rd test, especially if they space those out. But do keep in mind that they could take the test as many times as they want, and colleges are only going to see the scores that you personally send them. You might have a student only applying to UCs and Cal States. In this case, do they need to take the SAT and ACT at all? Well, if they truly are only applying to UCs or the state schools in California, no. because they're not allowed to see those scores. But we do know many times that this current admissions landscape can evolve for each student. They may tend to add more schools, and we always encourage our students, even if they might be applying only to UCs right now, to consider preparing and taking the exams for a number of reasons. Again, your student may end up adding schools later. These test-taking skills for the SAT and ACT will certainly only be beneficial in helping improve your students' test-taking skills for school tests as well. And we're hearing a lot more added involvement as far as these scores helping exempt students from some of the entry-level writing requirements that are often required for the UC freshmen. Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds good.
Let me stop my screen here.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and put that back up for everybody. I just want to, before I start, remind everybody too that we've got a Q&A button that you can use to ask us questions, and we are saving time at the end to answer your questions. So if you find that in the process of us talking, you didn't get your question answered or you missed it, go ahead and put it in the Q&A. We can see the chat too, but the Q&A helps us kind of keep it organized. So that would be great. All right, so we're going to talk a little about academics. Let me get that back up. Some of the things that we're seeing from our students right now, we have a ton of academic students that we work with. It's the majority of what we do at AJ Tutoring. And I think a lot of what we're seeing as a result of students being back from distance learning this year is that most students are feeling a lot better. Most students really appreciate being back in schools. There are some challenges, but I think that overall the opportunities outweigh the challenges. So I just wanted to highlight those, the patterns that we're seeing as a tutoring company who gets to see a lot of different academic students. For one, there seems to be a little bit of a variability in course rigor more than we used to see. What I mean by that is some classes that used to be typically rigorous, like you always had a test every 3 weeks, and the final was cumulative, and you knew how everything was going to be weighted within the class, and it was the same every year. Because distance learning made testing a little bit more challenging for teachers, they were worried more about cheating and things like that. Some of them haven't fully returned to their normal course load. Some of them have also spent a lot more time refreshing students on previous year's content because they know that some students come in with a lot of gaps from last year. And then some courses are just back at full strength, and if anything, are pushing even harder, it seems, than they used to. So some students are coming in with a lot of stress because they're behind, and some students are coming in feeling like, we're not doing anything in class. Is that okay? Am I staying on track? And so, a lot of what we're doing is trying to assess where our students are. We also saw some study skill regressions, which makes sense. If you're working from your bed, you don't need to keep a binder organized. You don't necessarily need to have the same kinds of study skills for tests that you normally would, especially if the tests were canceled largely. So our students are coming in kind of anxious or confused about how to really keep themselves organized and keep themselves in a good routine. That's more or less fixed itself over the course of the last semester, but we are still seeing people who are coming in brand new to tutoring at this time of the year, and that's a lot of what they're reporting. There are also some opportunities, though, to the fact that we're back from distance learning. I think one of the things that we got from having this disruption over the last couple of years is that flexible learning options seem to be a lot more widespread and a lot easier for students to find. So, for example, I've seen students who have gone to independent study, to online study. Some of them do it for all of their courses. Some of them do it for just one course that happens to be more challenging. Some of them are doing 4-credit courses with us. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means later. And so there's a lot of opportunities for students to try things that work for them because of the way that our schooling has changed over the last few years. I also see more students becoming better self-advocates. I think that because a lot of us were on distance learning last year, our students are seeing that they couldn't just sort of let things go. They had to actually be a little bit more involved in their learning. They had to be more willing to reach out to their teachers, to email their teachers, things that I would have had to coach students on in the past if I were tutoring, letting them know that there are good ways to approach your teachers about things, and this is how you can do it. I think a lot of our students actually have developed those skills as a result of the disruption and the distance learning that they were doing. So some good things definitely there as well. This is a sample of what we are hearing from parents. So I looked at the intake forms that we get for new students who come in, and we ask all of our academic students' parents to fill out what we call a parent goal form. And then they let us know with some degree of detail what their goals are for tutoring on that form. And it just gives us a little bit of a head start on that first session. So a lot of this stuff is what we've been seeing for many years. I looked at sort of the last 10 entries in our form to see what were the last 10 students who signed up, feeling like what were those parents looking for. And it's still, better approaches to study habits, making sure that our students understand the concepts. If they've got content gaps, fixing those, helping them study for tests and exams, helping them take tests without the stress and the pain, understanding things better. And then ultimately, I think that last one there, gain confidence and improve grade, is still a really big factor in a lot of people's goals, which makes sense. A lot of our students, I think, when they came back to in-person schooling, if they did struggle with that transition, their confidence did drop, and maybe they did see some grade drops as a result. And those are things that can spiral if we don't kind of catch them quickly. So this is kind of where we are as we look at our students as a tutoring organization, and what we're kind of emphasizing, when I talk to tutors about what we're seeing with our parents, our students, and what we should be looking at as we enter the second semester. So what I would recommend, if you were trying to figure out how to support your student in the second semester, and any of these things kind of have popped up for them, is to look at what we did last semester and what were the things that were successful and what were the things that we maybe need to work on. It's part of what we do with that form again. So for example, if your student had content gaps, like they just didn't quite get what they needed either last year or just last semester, and so they were missing some information as they entered the final exams or the final projects, this is a good time to make sure that we're incorporating review. We want to review prerequisite topics. We want to preview upcoming content as well. If you get stuck in a review process, then you'll continue to fall behind. So you need to kind of build in both of those when you're looking at content gaps. A lot of students have test taking issues. I think that's really common. So there are a lot of ways that test taking issues can present. Some of them are content gaps again. So it could just be that we need to review the material. Some of it is test taking strategy. Some students aren't pacing themselves well. They're going too slow and running out of time, or they're rushing and not checking their work. One thing that I saw a lot this year as I started working with some of my students was that they didn't necessarily have good work showing skills. So if you're used to being able to take kind of a multiple choice test on the computer because that was what was available at the time when we were in distance learning, you may have lost your ability to really clearly show your work. So just checking on that, making sure that they're not losing easy points. And then ultimately developing a study habit, which I think is like the golden thing that we're always hoping we can get our students to do, because cramming is so widespread. The more they can kind of build this into their routine, the better. And that kind of follows through to this last part, the poor organization or executive function issues. So some of our students, again, lost track of organization over the last year and a half, 2 years. They may not manage their time well because there was so much asynchronous learning. They could do things at all times of day and night. And now they're suddenly back on a schedule. So we need to really utilize that schedule to our advantage. We need to check their time management, make sure they're actually using their time wisely, that they're staying organized, and that they're establishing some kind of a homework routine. So again, this is if we're finding that any of our students are struggling at all, if there's anything going on that's making it hard on them, or even if they're doing well and they're getting the grades that they want, but they're just really stressed out and really tired, and there are some things we could do to improve. Okay, so a lot of the questions that we had when we put out this parent form were about AP, and I really want to spend some time on this. I had questions also about other kinds of advanced courses, so a little bit about honors courses, about middle college courses, or just college courses in general at junior colleges that aren't part of the middle college program. And then also independent study and for-credit courses. So I'll definitely get to those too. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to hear a little bit about the AP program this year, what has changed, what hasn't changed, and what we're doing to get kids ready. So for anybody who's not aware, AP program is something put on by the College Board, who also puts on the SAT. Schools tend to offer it in our area. Most schools do. There are a handful of schools that don't. They have different programs. They tend to be private schools or the public schools that offer something called International Baccalaureate, which is a less common version of college level advanced courses. So vast majority of schools in our area offer AP courses to high school students. Some of them have different levels of requirements for this. So some schools cap the age when students can start APs, or they cap the number of APs they can sign up for, primarily because students can get overwhelmed if they take too many APs at once, which isn't something we want to do. And the reason it's so overwhelming is that these are advanced placement because they are college level courses. And many colleges and universities around the country will accept passing scores on the AP exams as proof that they basically have accomplished what they need to gain college credit in their course. So you could take, for example, AP biology, and you take the course, you get a good grade, and at the end you take the AP exam and you get 4, and the school that you're applying for says 4 is, a strong passing score, so we're going to go ahead and give you college credit for AP, for not AP, but for college biology, for introduction to biology. So it's not only placing you out of a class, it's literally giving you credit toward graduation. So APs are very popular in our area, for sure. I had a lot of questions about, how do we navigate AP courses? So who are good candidates for AP courses? Any high school student who feels like they're ready for an AP course is definitely a good candidate. There are some specifics that we need to look at, though. So a lot of schools require students to complete prerequisites, or like I said, they have to be a certain age, a certain level in school, like maybe sophomores aren't allowed, but juniors can, or maybe you can take only 2 as a junior and then 4 as a senior. So every school has kind of a different set of requirements for AP courses. But almost all of them include prerequisites. So for example, you're probably not going to take AP Calculus BC without some kind of either very rigorous pre-calculus class, like an honors pre-calculus class that is meant to push you into BC calculus, or you maybe have taken AP Calculus AB, which is the first level of AP Calculus available. So that's something to look into. What are the prerequisites that we have? You also want to make sure that your students have time, because these are rigorous courses. They ask for more homework, they ask for more studying, and in the end, they're going to be taking more tests or doing more projects, depending on the kind of AP course it is. And it could just be really difficult for them. It might just take individual students more time in general. So it's important that we also take that into account when we're looking at AP courses. Not to undersell AP courses, though, but AP courses are very positively viewed by colleges at this point. When we're looking at college admissions, course rigor is a huge part of the college admissions pie. It's a big wedge in the pie in terms of what we want to see from a student. It's not just that a student gets straight A's, it's that a student gets really good grades in really hard classes. So taking AP courses is one way to kind of telegraph that, because it'll say AP on the transcript. After admission, so if it's not for admissions decision purposes, but it's just for, you already know you've gotten into a college and you're still taking an AP as a senior, since a lot of seniors take APs, it could be about placement. So if you get a certain grade or a certain score on the AP exam, you then get to place out of an introductory level class. So this gets back to this next question. Do you have to take the AP exam? I definitely got questions both directions. Like, do you have to take the AP course? Do you have to take the AP exam? The short answer is no. A strong grade in an AP course is impressive, period, full stop. But there are some really good reasons to take AP exams, even if you feel like you're doing well in the course and you've got that taken care of. And one is that you can't earn college credit without the exam score. Even if you get an A in AP biology, if you don't take the AP exam, there's not going to be college credit, like literal units of college credit assigned to you as a student entering college or university. So you need to have a passing score. It's also a great way to demonstrate mastery on a standardized exam. As Pat was saying, the UCs are no longer accepting SAT and ACT scores. There really aren't a lot of standardized tests that we can use to demonstrate our mastery of things. But AP exams are still accepted. And so in order to show that you're not only doing well in school, but it's relative to everybody else, you are actually extremely good at this subject. This is one of the few ways that you can actually do this. In fact, I think it's the only standardized test that UCs are accepting right now. From high school students specifically. So very good reasons to take AP exams as well. How do you prepare for AP exams? So I think there's a lot of nervousness around, what are AP exams like? Is my student going to be ready in time? How do I make that decision? So there are a lot of ways that students are preparing. In school, their teachers are almost certainly going to include some amount of test preparation in their courses. And of course, the actual AP course should be going over the content that's going to be on that exam. This can vary somewhat between schools and between classes within schools. We do see sometimes that students come in and maybe they're in like AP US history and their class hasn't gotten as far in history. There's usually a time period there that they have to cover, as we would expect at this time of year. Or they've rushed through some of the units because they wanted to get through it quickly and then do some review later. And for some students, that'll work well, and so for some students, that'll be a disaster. And so what we often see in our academic support is, okay, this is something you didn't get, so we're going to make sure we go back over that when we get to the AP prep. At home, there are a lot of resources for independent preparation for AP exams. So online, the AP Central, which is on the College Board website, you can just search AP Central. You can find out practice questions. You can find out what is the makeup of your individual test. I've considered putting that up here, but every test is slightly different, so it wouldn't have really been useful to show every single AP test in its format because they do vary. But you can look at this on the website. And students also often have access to AP Classroom, which is something that their teacher uses to assign work through the College Board website. And that's directly from the makers of the test, giving you practice. There are also preparation books that you can buy, at Barnes & Noble or Amazon that are either made by the College Board or made by other companies. There are a lot that we recommend and that we often have in our offices and we'll give to students to kind of help them get what they need. And so finally, of course, I've got to talk about what we do as a company to help people get prepared for these tests. If a student wants to work with a tutor one-on-one to prepare for a test, we have 4 to 8 session test preparation programs for all the most commonly taken AP exams. These include a pre-prep diagnostic, so even before you sign up, you can kind of see where you're at. Instruction on content review, so the things that students may be missing, again, like our sort of hypothetical AP US history student who missed some of the units and needs to kind of go back and refresh those, as well as test taking strategies. So what can we expect from the test and how do you pace yourself and what's the best way to deal with not knowing the answer on a question and all of those things. And we also, I think this is one of the big values that we can offer on top of the tutoring is full mock exams. So we have AP practice exams that we can use, and we also offer mock exams as we get close to the test. We don't take these as early because, again, you need to make sure you've covered the content first. But these start in, I think, end of March. On Sunday afternoons, we're offering AP mock exams to our AP test prep students. This is a little different from diagnostics for SAT, ACT, which is a little bit broader. Because AP exams include a very thorough free response section, we can't just sort of auto-grade it in the same way that we can for a diagnostic on the SAT or ACT, which is all multiple choice Scantron level testing. So you can't do a diagnostic unless you have at least one session with a tutor who is skilled at grading the free response and can give you feedback on it. So these are only available to our actual AP test prep students, not our academic students and not people who are not currently working with us. That's different from the pre-prep diagnostic, which is not a complete test. It's just an assessment of where you are in the process. So that's something that anybody can take no matter what stage they are with AP prep. So we've got great programs. And if anybody's got specific questions, we can definitely talk about those later. The main thing, I think, last year when I did this, I had a lot of updates on the AP exams in 2021, ton of updates in 2020. Things were very chaotic for AP exams. They were some of the few ones that didn't actually get canceled, but they came out in a very weird format because we were all distance learning, or so many of us were distance learning. There were a lot of at-home AP exams that were taken online. That is not the case this year. There are not at-home online AP exams at all. AP exams are basically back to normal this year. There's the one set of regular dates that are the first 2 weeks of May. So May 2nd to May 13th are all the regular AP exam dates. As usual, as they've always had, there are makeup dates that come up if students don't make it to their exams. Sometimes a whole class has to reschedule an exam. But these are normal makeup dates that don't that again would happen at school, that a school would put on for their students. There is a pilot program for digital in-school AP exams. So these are tests that are not taken at home. They are taken on the computer in a classroom with like a teacher proctoring, so it's not something where students are unproctored. And that helps with cheating and some of the things that we might have been more worried about last year when students were taking them online at home. And it's only available for AP World History and AP Literature and Composition. And schools may decline to do it. So if you have students in these AP classes this year specifically, you should check to see what their school has decided to do, because the school gets to decide whether they're going to take online these digital exams, which they are online, but they're not actually taking them from home. They're taking them at school. Or if they've decided to take the paper and pencil versions instead. The good news is that the tests are identical. Even though one is taken on the computer and one is taken on paper, the actual structure of them, the date that they take them, the timing and the pacing, all of these are the same. The only difference is that students will be able to type their responses if they're on the computer, and they'll be able to use other sorts of like annotation software in order to find parts of the passages. These are very writing and passages heavy AP exams. But they've done their best to make sure that these are the same, that students are not going to have a huge, they're not going to have to do anything hugely different. They have said that they're going to send more information about this in the coming months. In the past, what they've done is they've sent kind of like a practice test program so that you can see like what is it like to navigate the test. This is very typical for computer-based tests. But again, this is not like last year where we had the ability to take the tests online at home, and they had to do other sort of anti-cheating methods to try to keep that from happening. Looking beyond 2021-22, or maybe even just looking at next semester, again, I had talked about flexible learning opportunities for our students, and this is kind of an example of some of the things we're seeing. So students can take college courses. There are middle college programs that are sometimes offered through schools. I'm based in Los Gatos, and so I've seen Los Gatos high school students take classes at West Valley Junior College, which is in Saratoga. Through these middle college programs, and I know they exist at other high schools along the peninsula as well. These are great opportunities for students to try college courses. I think that looking at four-year universities, it looks great to take a college course. It's a rigorous course, so I'm not worried at all about what that looks like for admissions. Also, students can take college courses over the summer. So a lot of junior colleges in our area offer summer enrollment for high school students. It's not guaranteed, so it's definitely worth looking into. But that can be a great way to get through prerequisites. If you're a senior looking at next year, or a junior looking to try to get out of some college requirements potentially, or if you're trying to jump a lane at school. I've seen students say, I don't want to take geometry. I want to go from Algebra 1 to Algebra 2. My school typically makes me take geometry in the middle of those classes, so I'm going to try to take this as a summer course. And there are also other high schools that will offer this sometimes as well, some private high schools I know for sure. You can also take 4-credit courses with AJ Tutoring. So there are a few organizations in our area that offer this. AJ Tutoring can offer this as well. These are one-on-one and group courses over the summer that we can provide in a variety of high school courses, including AP courses. Some of our students will take things over the summer, and they'll do a very intense course to get through it over the summer. Some of our students will start now. I have a couple of students that I know of that worked with us for pre-calculus, and they switched from their pre-calculus courses mid-year. So they switched in October and started with us one-on-one, taking 4-credit pre-calculus instead of taking it through their school. And that was an opportunity that was really beneficial for them because they needed to get kind of a different approach. This is something where a tutor can really find out what's going on with your student and give them what they need to be successful. There are also mastery-based courses, which I think is a really big highlight that I don't want to let go. A mastery-based course means that you don't pass unless you show that you have mastered the content. And as a result, that means that the scores that you get on your exams and on your projects, if they don't meet a certain level, we're going to ask you to go back and make corrections, or we're going to ask you to do it over. So our students don't come out of these with F's and D's. They come out of these typically with A's and B's. We also have a lot of other summer opportunities. So 4-credit courses are offered over the summer. The group courses are fixed, obviously. They have fixed schedules, but one-on-one is rolling enrollment. You could enroll today. The main thing you need to be able to do is to work with your school to make sure it's approved. And a lot of the schools in our area have been approving 4-credit courses. Summer bridge enrichment courses at AJ Tutoring are also a great opportunity to get ahead. These are not for credit, so you're not getting any course credit for these courses with us, but they are typically one-on-one courses where we can work with you to kind of get ahead on your AP and honors material. We can help you with your college courses if you're taking a summer course, like I mentioned, at a college and you need some extra support. And they offer enrichment opportunities that can help our students develop their interests. So maybe there's something that you don't get a chance to do at school that a tutor at our company can offer, specialized knowledge on. I recently talked to a tutor who has experience teaching at the college level creative writing and asked if he could offer a mystery writing course, which sounds awesome. I would love to take that. So these are one-on-one customizable courses. If you look at our website and you see something similar, but it's not quite what you're looking for, it's almost certainly something we could customize to fit your needs. So definitely look into it. That is it for me. So from the academic standpoint, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and give it back to Pat, if that's all right with you. And we can talk about some of these additional miscellaneous questions.
Yeah, let me share my screen. We're almost done, team. Thank you guys for hanging up with us. Let's see here. Who's that now? So yeah, so a couple other things. Again, do you help with college admissions essays? That was a number of questions that we saw from our form. The answer is yes. We started doing more of that in the last year or so. Historically, we've really pointed students towards independent counselors who, of course, have a specialty in this as well. But we know a lot of students are not working with independent counselors per se, and maybe working with their counselors at school. And maybe, really their biggest need is some of the college admissions essay support. And as Jessica mentioned, we have a really incredible team of English experts who have a lot of experience in helping students with those college admissions essays. So if you have a current junior who's looking to use this summer for their college admissions essays, and we would be happy to help. So just let us know and we can connect with you and talk more about your students' needs and come up with a great plan. We already talked a little bit about how to best utilize the summer. Again, great. Obviously if you're a sophomore, going to be a junior next year, this is the summer to really start preparing and beginning to focus on your SAT and ACT testing. Again, Jessica mentioned, we can, of course, get out front of some of that testing as well with some of the, more challenging academic courses, beginning to use bridge courses, things of that nature. So the summer is a great time for test prep as well as the summer to, potentially look ahead, use that for credit opportunities that we offer to maybe, jump a lane, going from geometry from last year, taking Algebra 2 over the summer to be able to take pre-calc, as in the school year next year. Lastly, Jessica, I don't know did you answer this? I forget. Did we take AP tests without taking the AP class? We generally don't recommend that. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I didn't actually address that directly. So I will say that I've had this question before, and it depends a little bit. So sometimes what will happen is a student will say, I'm taking a really rigorous course. It's not technically an AP course, but from what my teacher tells me and from what others have told me, I should be prepared for the AP test. Is it okay for me to take an AP test in this situation? And the answer is yes. But it can be hard to find an AP test to sit when it's not associated with a course, because schools have to order AP tests early, and they order a fixed number of tests. They usually order enough to have extra, but you may have to call around or look into homeschool organizations that are kind of in the same boat, where a student is not associated with like a brick and mortar school and they want to take an AP, and that can sometimes be the case. So this is something that we will often do as well when we're offering for-credit AP courses, is we'll kind of work with students to figure out where they're going to be able to take this test. Typically, it's at the school that they go to if they are, attending a brick-and-mortar school in our area. And so, yeah, so I think that is probably the best case scenario for taking an AP test without the AP class. I don't think it's actually a huge benefit in most cases to do that. And I definitely wouldn't recommend sort of like, in most cases, doing like an independent study or saying like, well, I took the regular course, so I could probably take the AP test. It's probably not worth it. I would recommend only taking AP tests that you're taking an AP course for in most circumstances.
Great.
And Pat, too, you mentioned on the college admissions courses or the college admissions essays, like, of course, I know you know this and you would say this to anybody, but obviously if you're working with a college admissions counselor and they're helping you with essays, you probably should stick with them, because having two different tutors helping you with essays may be, kind of confusing. But we work with a lot of college admissions, or not college admissions counselors, but college counselors who help students with their admissions. And many of them will refer to us if they're if they're full and they want to help students with essays. So we definitely are there as support for those essays.
Thank you. Agree, Jessica. Thank you for pointing that out. Again,
Yeah.
if you're working with an independent counselor, we encourage you for the essay support to work directly with the counselor and see if they could use the additional support. And if so, great. We're happy to help. If not, I know it can sometimes be easiest to keep everything's under one tent, so to speak, as far as the whole admissions process. But we do that, and we're happy to help if the situation arises.
Absolutely. There's one more question in the chat, and I'll just answer it here. And I'm happy to email people as well if they have questions specific to AP. But so for these early AP honors starts over the summer, these are currently only offered one-on-one. We don't have group offerings. Typically for AP and honors courses, when we're doing early starts, we're helping students with early assignments. A lot of classes will give you assignments to prepare for before school starts. And these can vary widely between schools. So it's really hard for us to offer a group class unless we know for sure that we're going to have like 5 people from this school doing AP US history, for example. So that's the benefit of one-on-one, is that we can really customize it to you. But certainly if there is enough interest and we see that there's some usefulness there, we'll definitely offer group.
Great. Well, let me stop sharing here real quick. If you have any, we're going to stick around for a little bit. If you have any questions, if you'd like to put them in the chat now, you are more than welcome to. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, if I can do that, of course. We will we'll be here to